What's up, rappers and rap battlers? I am DJ Pompey of the No Coast Rap Battle League. It's our new shirt design. We've got more of those, by the way, if you want one. I'm just here today to talk about not choking in rap battles and in general doing better performances. So specifically, what I'm talking about here is a written a cappella format of rap battles, such that you see in No Coast, in Grind Time, King of the Dot, URL Smack. That's what we're talking about. So this is a very difficult thing for people to do, even often established rappers, right? Because what you've got to do is, sometimes the rounds used to just be 60 seconds, but nowadays it's not uncommon to see like 2-minute, 3-minute rounds or even longer. So if you imagine, even 2-minute rounds, memorizing word per word, 6 minutes of material for a single 3-round battle, and coming and on the day delivering it, hopefully verbatim the way you intended it, on the first take. It's not really the same thing as a song that you work on. Then you go into the studio, you spit it in several takes, you edit it together over that process, and then eventually you go out and you perform it live. Like, you're producing all this material just to be delivered once. And there's kind of an epidemic of choking, as it's called, even among sometimes more established people. With all the new talent that we're attracting in the No Coast Chicago division and the Minneapolis division, I want to just put out at least what I've learned so far about not choking, because there's lots of techniques that people use, but no one's really talking about it. If someone takes these tips and then later beats me in the battle by having them, then so be it. But let's all just be better. So this is what I know. So choking. What is choking? That is, you are battling and then you break from battling, right? You just completely break character and you stop delivering material, or you stop delivering new material. Sometimes people just say the last line a bunch of times hoping they'll remember the next one, and that's choking too. Then there's a lesser version of that, which is a stumble. That's like, it didn't quite come out the way you wanted, but you kept going. Basically, you stayed in character, you keep battling. It factors into your overall performance, but it's not a huge deal. The longer rounds we've got nowadays, stumbles are usually kind of expected. They happen. But what you don't want to do is go all the way into choking. If one person doesn't stumble at all and the other person does stumble a little, then you might win or lose on that basis, but only if it's really close. If one person chokes, you at least lose that round automatically, but you possibly just lose the whole battle just because you choked. You're already doing all this work, so why ruin it, There are 4 basic phases that I think about in terms of preventing choking. Those steps are planning, writing, memorizing, and performing. People don't always talk about planning, but one of the most common reasons that people choke is they just had too much on their plate, and maybe they knew how to prepare, but they just didn't give themselves time to do it. So don't have 3 battles in the same month. Don't have a bunch of other just non-battle related life events that are gonna happen and then not make time to prepare. Figure out how much time you need and then just make sure you're going to have it plus a little more, because things come up. So many times people have even really skilled people have given subpar performances and they're like, I only started writing like 3 days before the battle. Like, okay, well, maybe just a tornado hit your house or something, but probably you could have planned better. That's pretty self-explanatory. Step 2 is writing. I haven't heard people talk a lot about just writing stuff that's easier to remember. And that happens to be really important. And once you know about these things, if you watch battles from more experienced people, you realize they're doing it a lot. They're doing these things, just, it's kind of under the radar. Basically, that has to do with how you construct your rounds. Making one thing flow into the next, like it's storytelling. If I start out with your name, and then, okay, now that I've talked about your name, and your crew's name is this, and in general, here's something about your crewmates. Oh, and they're they're having sex with your girlfriend or something. And now let's talk about your girlfriend. Or, I usually don't talk about people's girlfriends, but I could. Whatever it is, like, you probably construct the material in a completely, if you're like me, in a completely different order than how you deliver it. But if you group the related stuff together and then you see, like, what would it make sense to talk about next, it'll probably be easier for people to grasp it. Like, people will follow it better when you're delivering it, but almost more importantly, you'll probably be able to remember it better. And even if there isn't like a direct tie-in from one thing to the next, you can still kind of invent connections for yourself, and you need to do that. You need to leave breadcrumb trails from one piece of material, one chunk to the next, because that's how memory works. It works in chunks. And if you can get from the last line of like one scheme into the first line of the next, then you're going to be able to remember it. With no connection at all, you're less likely to be able to. Doesn't matter what that is. It might be because they actually logically make sense in that order, or it could just be a connection you make up in your head. I just talked about elephants. People used to think elephants were scared of mice, and the next line happens to be about mouse. That's just a mnemonic for me. Whatever. Another thing you see very often is making the setup bar of one scheme rhyme with the end of the thing previous to it. I think I've got an example of this that you'll see later. I'll just give an example of a round where I've used all these techniques, because it's kind of hard just to illustrate. But I like to call them bleed-ins. Like the rhyme scheme you were on before is bleeding into the setup of the next rhyme scheme you're going to go into. And it makes your stuff sound more technical and flow better. But again, the real reason people do it is to remember easier. You don't want to be fumbling around trying to figure out what you're going to do next. It really weakens your performance. And one of the easiest things to do if you don't want to forget things is just memorize less. I've seen a lot of people go into a battle where, like, the rounds were going to be 60 seconds, 90 seconds, and for some reason they just decided they had a lot of shit to say, and they came with like 3 minutes of material in a single round. They didn't need to do that, and then they also stumbled a lot. Well, they gave themselves twice as much work to do, Edit a whole lot, and I'll go over when I show the example of my round one of the ways that I do that, which is to figure out which parts are payoffs and which parts are build-ups, and if there's too much build-up and not enough payoff, then I know I need to slash something. But in general, just whatever the round times are, stay within that. You're going to have a more focused, stronger performance if you're near that target. A little over is fine, but don't throw in entire extra minutes of material, because you'll probably forget something. You're more chance to stumble, and in general, people are going to be tired of hearing you talk. They'll want to hear someone else talk, so you don't want people to get tired of you. Edit. Number 3, memorizing. So this is what people normally talk about when they talk about not choking. Everyone's memory is a little different. You need to learn yourself, learn how much time you need to memorize X amount of material. Myself, I set the goal of totally freezing my material 3 days from the battle. It'll probably take me a day, not an entire day, but the amount of free time you normally have in a day, to memorize. That means getting off the page to where I can totally recite it. And then there's another day where I'm drilling. That means that I get it so far in my head that no matter what goes wrong, I can keep saying it. Noise in the room, whatever, a rap battle is a very unnatural, very distracting environment. You don't want to be too distractible. That's why I say it needs to be not just memorized, but drilled. And that's where you just go over and over and over as fast as you can until you just have it. And then you can actually perform with it once you know it in that level. Now you want to practice in order, front to back, beginning to end as it's intended. Don't just have a pile of bars, because you're going to just be fumbling around, which bit do I want to say next? Very few people have even been able to do remotely well in battle rap with just a pile of bars and ideas sort of strategy. In my opinion, the ones that have done well would have done even better if they just did things in a planned order. So at that point, depending on if you're like a more visual learner or like me, an auditory learner, another thing a lot of people do is they record themselves saying their material, and then they, in the days leading up to the battle, listen to it over and over. So during those 3 days, that's what I would do. I'd take a little microphone, whatever. You can do it on your phone. If you don't have a microphone, whatever, you don't have to go in the studio. and just record yourself saying your rounds, and then listen to yourself saying it, and that'll just ingrain it in you. Now, your ideal case, of course, is to say every single line you wanted to say in the exact order you wanted to say them, and you hope that happens, but be prepared to skip around. If you do just forget what is coming next, that still happens to me, but what I do is I find something I do remember. Something you want to have absolutely dialed is the openers of every round and the closers of every round. And if you've gotten through half your round and you don't remember what's next, like, a better thing to do than spend like 10 entire seconds, which could feel like a really long time, trying to remember it, is just cut right to the closer, or cut to something you do remember. Maybe in the next round you'll be able to get that missing material out. Maybe not. It doesn't really matter. You would be much more likely to think someone won that had a bit of a short round, and it might have actually been because they forgot something, but they just had a short round. You don't know that. Versus someone who actually, stumbled and choked. At that point you lose. So you want to get everything out, but you might have to skip around. That's fine. When you're drilling, recite it as fast as you can from memory. Try to get rid of that pause that happens from the end of that one chunk I talked about to the beginning of the next. Once you've done it fast, then you can start rehearsing at more delivery tempo for performance. And in the real world, in the real battle, you'll have to pause for reaction and so forth. But, don't pause till you know that reaction's coming. You might just have to go on to the next thing. A lot of adaptation required, to be a really good performer. You don't know what your environment's going to be like. You have to control the crowd. You might have to win them over. So this comes to the next phase of not choking, which is actually performing. And basically the biggest thing is don't break character. You were there to make fun of that guy or gal or whatever. You're plant, whatever you're battling. And you want to keep making fun of them. You want to keep battling them. Whatever your character is like, if it's me, whatever Pompey would do, just play off stumbles. If you're trying to remember the next thing for a second, it's better to just be silent or to, hold it down, whatever, than to I forgot, let me try and remember. No, don't. That's breaking character. Either just be silent, keep the tension, still be battling them, and then remember it, or skip to something you do remember. And like I said, no one really knows what your plan was. I've had rounds I've done, maybe we'll show a clip or two, where I didn't remember the beginning of the round, and I just sort of stood there with a shit-eating grin on my face, staring at them, and I'm pretty sure everyone there just thought I was just deliberately waiting to start my round to build tension, which couldn't have been further from the truth. It took me a while to remember my opener. And the worst thing that can happen to you in a written battle is you freestyle when you didn't want it to. Flips are one thing. Rebuttals at the beginning of rounds or whatever are one thing. But to have to go into freestyling, that's usually turns out even worse than waiting for a little while to remember your bars. So, but if you do have to freestyle, then stay on topic. Don't do what people always do, and I forgot my raps, so I'm going to freestyle and bring it back or whatever. And don't say, and I'm freestyling now. Just don't announce that you're freestyling. That's not freestyling. That's not what's good about freestyling. It's just that you say off the top and freestyling. Just, do what you came to do. Battle the person if you're going to freestyle. Actually make fun of them and, stay in character. Like I keep saying. So that's it, man. Preparing, writing, memorizing, performing. Give yourself time and stay in character. The two most important things maybe on there. So shout out to everyone who has the guts to try this stuff. Pretty much everyone chokes at some point in their battle career. The best thing usually you can do is when it happens that first time, learn from the experience. Just decide you're not going to do it again and figure out what it is you need to do better. Good luck, everyone.